other people can come in and get on here. And sorry about that. Technology sometimes is not our friend.
Right.
So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jennifer. I'm the founder of the Rahab Center. And this week I have decided to take on a topic that is not discussed a lot. And one of the reasons I've decided to take this topic on is that a lot of the women that we help that come through our center are domestic violence survivors. So my good friend here, Mickey Sturgis, she is also a survivor of domestic violence. And out of her recovery and her mission, she has now started a foundation, or not a foundation, excuse me, a nonprofit called Abuse Recovery Ministry. So I asked Mickey to come on today and share a little bit with us about her story, how she survived it, what made her decide to leave this situation, how God played a role in this. And then I would like her to take some time too and talk about her ministry. And then we'll post the website for her ministry. So you'll get that afterwards. Because it is a domestic violence situation of people that she's helping, same thing in my case, we don't release times or location of where we're meeting with people for the safety. Now, one thing that I do want to say is that most people think domestic violence is just for women. It is not. It goes on both sides of the street. There are men that are victims of domestic violence too, and that is not talked about a lot. But because I serve mostly women, I see that on almost an everyday basis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to Mickey. And if you guys have any questions, go ahead and post them in the comments. And after she is done, we'll go ahead and get those answered for you. All right, Mickey, it's all yours.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And sorry about the technology difficulties. My name is Mickey Sturgis. I'm in Grand Junction. And so I'm just going to go from the beginning, the first question you asked me about my experience. So I was married for 13 years before my current marriage. That was a long time ago. And my first husband was very abusive from the beginning. But I was very young. He was very young. I thought, I was this angel that was sent to rescue him. He was a troubled person, and I thought, okay, well, I was sent to him and to help him heal from that. Well, was I wrong? But I stayed with him for 13 years. And at the end of 13 years, let me go back up. In the beginning, the abuse started just a belittling and calling me names. And then, of course, the physical abuse happened. But every single time, I blamed myself. And I kept saying, if I didn't get him mad, if I didn't do things right, I didn't do things wrong, then I wouldn't have gotten to this. So I kept blaming myself. And also I kept saying, you know what, divorce isn't my option. I made this commitment. I should be with him through thick and thin, right? Mm-hmm. And then at the end of 13 years, actually, I already had a son. He was about 3 years old at the time. It came to a point where he pointed a gun at me and said, I'm going to kill you if you ever say you're going to leave me. And at that point, it was surprisingly, my reaction to that was like, go ahead and kill me. I'm done. I can't promise you to never, ever get you mad again. Because he was asking me, he was like, if you ever get me mad like this again, I'll kill you, right? Mm-hmm. So I knew I couldn't promise that because I couldn't control him, whether he gets mad or not, right? So at that point I said, I can't promise that. So why don't you just go ahead and shoot me? Mm-hmm. And I bet you he was scared about himself, but he said, you know what, you're crazy. And he told me, you're crazy, and lowered the gun and sort of walked away. I ran to the bathroom and lock the door and start crying. So that I still remember to this day, that's what I did. And I don't know how long I was in the bathroom, locked, just praying to God. At that point, I was praying to my father who died like a year before. And I was like, Dad, please help me. I don't know what to do. And maybe a hour, 2 hours went by. I don't remember that part. I knew my son at the time, 3 years old, was sleeping in the one of the bedrooms. And I just didn't know what to do. But he came back and said, I won't do anything. Please come back. I'm sorry. He apologized as usual. And so I decided at that point, I have to get out of here. But I knew if I brought it up again, he will do something again. So at that point, my survival mode was hyper survival mode. I just didn't do anything. I just apologized. I said, you know what? I'm sorry I ever brought that up. I'll never do that again. I'll stay with you, no problem. But in my mind, I was done. I was done. And that was 1999. So that
Wow.
was around yeah. So that's been a long time. It's been a long journey. But what I did differently at that time was because before that, several times I left. I left to go to my friend's house and never went through with it. I went to my friend's house. He called and said, I'm sorry, this will never happen again. Come back. I went back. So I knew myself. And this time, what I did different was I chose to go to a domestic violence shelter. So after this happened, I think must have been a weekend. And then when I went back to work the next day, I contacted my pastor. And my pastor, who I've been seeing him as a counselor, we were going through marriage counseling with him. And he was so shocked because I never ever told him that this abuse was happening. Even in the marriage counseling, I hid it. I hid it so well that pastor was so surprised, shocked to hear what happened. And he asked me, how long has it been like this? He never pointed a gun at me before, but physical abuse were happening. The belittling was happening all the time. Verbal, emotional, physical abuse was going on for the past 13 years. So I told him that, and he goes, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Never knew that. And of course, it's not his fault, right? I didn't tell him that. So luckily for me, his brother was assistant DA at the time in Orange County. And he told him what resources to give to me, and I contacted the domestic police. I think police department. That's what I contacted, and the police department gave me the phone number for the domestic violence assistant shelter, and I contacted all these places, and the domestic violence shelter at the time said, okay, we have no opening right now. And my heart sank when they said we have no opening. And I said, okay, that's okay. So could you please put my name down and tell me when this hub opens? And I told, at the time that I didn't realize I had this thing already planned out. That was like safety plan. But in my mind, knew he was going on a business trip. And then I thought that would be the good time for me to leave because I was just too scared to leave when he was home. So I did plan, and they told me, okay, so when you're ready to go, please contact us again and see if there's any opening. And I did. And later I found out that's what they usually do. They sort of sift those people who are just calling in to get a shelter.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that out later on. So when I called back and I was like dead serious, then that's when they told me, okay, this is what you need to do. I had to go to police department. Police officer would escort me to the shelter, and that's what I did. And even after that, I went through this mourning process of should I go back? Should I go back for my son? Should I just that was maybe this was a mistake. All these things,
Mm-hmm.
all the emotions I felt, all the emotions. The domestic violence shelter was so helpful. They provided me for legal assistance. That means somebody who did go with me to the court to get a restraining order. I had to attend little like small groups, therapy, social services, all that. So I was very lucky to get that. Um, the social services was involved because even though I was the victim of domestic abuse, they count that as a child abuse as well because I endangered my son being in that situation with him. So of course the social worker was so nice, and it was just really a great process for me. I learned a whole lot about about being a mother and how domestic abuse um, affects even the victims' mothers who care so much about the children, yet still we're still affected.
Mm-hmm.
Our brains are just totally in turmoil. We are always in a fight or flight mode,
Mm-hmm.
hypersensitive. So that's what happened. But because of that, I went through at least, I think, 6 months of counseling, therapy, social services, the supervision and the legal battles with, divorce and restraining order, all that, all that. Um, so what happened was I was very embarrassed. I was ashamed by what happened. And I didn't want to go back to church because I was ashamed. And one day, I still remember it was the Easter Sunday. My pastor called me and said, "How are you doing? I haven't seen you at the church." And I said, "You know what, to be honest, Pastor, I am so embarrassed. I can't go back because I'm so embarrassed that, I'm divorced. I was in the domestic violence shelter and, I hid it." And
Mm-hmm.
he said, "You know what? What do you think church is? Church is for sinners. Church is for the brokenhearted. And you can come as you are, and we'll accept you back, of course. God will accept you no matter what." And that was total resurrection of my heart as well. So I went back to church and never looked back. I went back to church and I rededicated my heart to the Lord. And, I never looked back. And sometimes I did feel like, should I go back? That entered my mind many
Mm-hmm.
times because I seen my son at the time, he turned 4 in the shelter. And he just didn't understand what was going on. He missed his dad. He cried Papa so many times, and I felt so bad. So I contemplated, but when I did, and I totally recommend this to people who are contemplating for going back, think about those times that was horrible. Think about those, you don't want to keep thinking about the bad times, but if you have this thing come into your mind saying, you know what, I should go back, I miss him, or maybe I should go back for my child. Think about the time he was calling you names, he was throwing things at you, he was choking you, he was throwing you against the wall. Those are the times that tell you, no, God doesn't want us to be abused like that. There's so many verses in the Bible, in the history, in the Old Testament, there are so many things that God is really angry at people being abused, right? So
Mm-hmm.
please keep that in mind. God doesn't want us to be abused. That's one of the things I would like to share is that one of the values that I keep for myself is family
Mm-hmm.
and marriage vows. It's very important to me. That actually backfired on me. There are certain things that you can let go. And of course, everybody knows the Bible says you can divorce if adultery happens. But what about abuse? Yes, it's if you're in danger, God doesn't want you to be suffering like that. He doesn't tell you to be oppressed. He doesn't tell you to be beaten and suffered abuse
Mm-hmm.
like that. So that's one thing that I would highly recommend to assess. I won't tell people to leave because there are people who could actually recover from being an abuser. It's
Mm-hmm.
They have a program that helps abuser to become, realize their abuse is not a good thing, to go from abuser to a normal person,
Mm-hmm.
normal person who knows the abuse is bad. So, but they have to be willing, and
Mm-hmm.
most men are not willing. So that's one thing that I focus on women who, like me, want to heal and
Mm-hmm.
want to know what to do, what steps to take to heal from that. Because during that time, the 13 years that I was there, I didn't realize my brain was actually rewired to become just barely surviving. It's like, oh gosh, I'm always in the fight and fright mode
Mm-hmm.
and under stress. Um, you know, totally on hyper sensitive mode. It was always like that. So it's I realized that's what happened. So even if you out of the relationship, out of the abusive situation in a safe place, you're constantly triggered or constantly watching. That's what happened to me after I left. I sometimes go to work because he knew where I worked. On the way from work to home, I would drive by the police station just to make sure he's not following me or whatever. So that's what I did sometimes. If I felt like somebody's following me, I would just go around the police station just to make sure, and then I would go home. And I
Mm-hmm.
did stuff like that. And it took a long time for me to really be on my own and decided, okay, God's got me. I'm good. It took a while. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, I've gone through therapy, I've gone through counseling, social services, meeting with all these women, small groups. It was really, really helpful. So you asked me about how did I get to, did I get decide to start
Mm-hmm.
this ministry? Actually, this idea came to my mind. Well, actually, God spoke to me about 3.5 years ago. And every sermon, every podcast, um, like the sermon that I listened to on the podcast, or some stranger talking to me, sort of led me to this voice. Mickey, it's time. It's time to share your story and really help other women. And I I tell you, to be honest with you, I did fight. God, no, that's not me. I don't want to do it. I don't think I'm qualified. Like Moses, Moses was telling God, no, don't send me. I don't know what to say. I stutter. And same thing with me. I was like, no, I don't know. I don't know what to do. Gosh, that's not me. No, no. Mm-mm. I love to help women. I love to help people, but I really didn't think I was qualified. And that God's voice became louder and louder. And one time, we have new pastor in our church. Well, he's not new anymore, but at the time he was new. I think 2 years ago. And he said he during that sermon he talked about new ministry, and I heard it once again. Mickey, this is for you. And I prayed and prayed about it, and I started. So this past year, January or February of 2019, I decided to open up a group for women in Facebook. And in that Facebook group, there was a company organization, nonprofit organization called Abuse Recovery Ministries and Services. And I got to talk to them, and they were doing things that I actually was thinking about doing. And but I didn't have a guts to do. So Jennifer, I applaud you. You're doing so well with your nonprofit. But what I did was I piggybacked on this organization, Abuse Recovery Ministry and Services, because they already have everything done. They have this Her Journey program. It's 15-week faith-based program, which I got certified for. And they even offer those programs for abusers if they want to recover from that too. And so it's a both ways, right? I was thinking this exact same thing. I was thinking you talked about how men are abused as well as women. And also a flip side is women can all recover and heal, but as long as there are men who abuse, this is going to continue. So we have to educate both sides. And they do that. They also offer men who abuse to learn not to abuse anymore. And I know it's possible. With God, everything is possible, right? So it's possible. We, Her Journey program, and I partnered up with that organization, and then Her Journey is the program name. But that's why I decided, okay, I'm just going to go for it. So I had to take the 15 weeks program myself, and then I had to go through a certification program for the leaders. And that was intense, but I learned a lot, and now I'm able to offer that locally. So I'm very, very happy about that.
I apologize. Hold on.
Yeah. Okay, I can't hear you now. What happened?
Hang on 1 second. Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry, I had a kid bust in the door, and I was trying to click the mute, so he would. Shh. No, you can't use my phone. Can you please go away? See, this is life with children.
It's okay. Well, this is live.
Can you type into the comments for me? Can you type in the name of the website? Okay, please go out of my room. I'm finished talking to Miss Nikki. Go. I have a son ready to turn 7 and one that's 8.
I'm gonna show you. Watch.
Okay, come here. Can you say hi to everyone? Okay, go. Then
this is how I get on it.
This is life, people. This is life as a mom with 2 kids.
It's live. It's live.
If it's not the kids, it's the animals coming in.
Okay. So let's see.
You can type in your website, so this way people can use that or give it to someone that they might know. And my other question for you, Mickey, was with your ministry that you're using with the Abuse Recovery Ministry, if a man comes into the program that is actually an abuser, do you have men that coach the men? Or is that something that take on?
Okay, so are you talking about men who are abused or abuser?
A man abuser. The abuser.
Okay, so I don't have a program, but the
Okay.
organization, Abuse Recovery Ministries and Services, I will put the link over here. But
Okay.
that's they offer that. I don't know if
Right.
they have a local program, but they do offer that, and they can contact them there. As far as women are concerned, they can. So this Her Journey program is for women only, and
Okay.
we're very secure. We don't
Mhm.
tell people where it's happening, what time it's happening. They have to all go through me or the Abuse Recovery Services website.
Mhm.
So it's very secure, and it's
Mhm.
15-week program, and I highly highly recommend people to go through it all 15 weeks. I know it's
Mhm.
hard to commit sometimes, but it's, yeah. It's better
But
to go through that together.
right, you really need people like yourself and like myself that have been through these situations to come and walk alongside you and help you in this journey. Um, and
Yeah.
I really appreciate you bringing up that you were still in the church and hiding it. I think there's such
Yeah.
a stigma around if you're in the church and you were married that you're here and you're stuck in this marriage and you took those vows seriously and you stay.
Yeah.
And, you're absolutely correct. I mean, God does not, nowhere does it say God says, you stay, you get beat up, you get abused, you get hurt. That's not what God wants
No.
for us. So I'm really glad that you talked about that because that is a huge stigma, and especially in the church community. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm thankful that you brought that up because I have those conversations with women all the time that God does not expect you to be that person that is taking that. Um, and
Hmm.
and I'm glad you
And
talked about wanting to go back because I can tell you I did the same thing, and it takes time to heal from that journey. So thank you for bringing those two things up. I
yeah,
appreciate
take time to really, we really need to take time to heal,
it.
because it does take time. And a lot of abusers use that, submit to your husband,
Mhm. Yeah.
that only part that talk about the Bible. They use that a lot to control their women, control their wives, or control their girlfriend, or, so we really have to know what it says.
Mhm.
It doesn't say submit unconditionally. No. And
Exactly.
husbands, they have to love their wives too.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting dilemma, and it's about respect. It's not about being that doormat. And the sooner that we can see that and understand that, and it's hard because even if you meet a man in your church community, you really don't know who they are. And so I feel like
True.
now, as I've grown more in my spiritual walk, that we really need to be led by the Spirit, before we make those decisions to jump in. And please let me explain. We're just bringing light to this situation. This is something that God has put on my heart to bring out in this situation. With us all being home and some of us with our spouses more than ever, I'm seeing reports of
Yeah.
high numbers of domestic violence. So I encourage you that if you are in this situation, whether man or woman, please reach out to someone in your area. If you are in
Yep.
Mesa County, there are plenty of help. There's plenty of organizations that are willing to help with this.
Hmm.
But reach out. Don't let it get to that point. You know, even
Yeah.
now being at home with my husband, we get, that tension builds and you're not used to being together all the time. And so go take a walk, go take a walk,
Yeah.
go get out some fresh air, start praying about it. Don't let it get the best of you to where it escalates into that kind of situation. And what you said
Yeah.
about having kids in this kind of marriage is so key. If you have children, the worst thing that you can do is say, I'm staying for them. Those little children are sponges and they
Yeah.
pick up on everything. And if the mom is getting abused, and especially with boys, their chances of growing up to be an abuser themselves is very high. So please
Okay.
do not do that to your children. It's a very tricky
Yeah.
road, yes, but
Yeah.
do
It's,
it.
you know what, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one of the reasons when I was in that bathroom, I was thinking, I do not want my son to think this is okay.
Exactly.
You know, because if you stay, he or I have a son, he would think, okay, dad's doing it, why not me? I could do this, right? So
Exactly.
we don't want to create abuser. Or in my son's case, actually, he became very soft. He's a peacemaker. And I think that's also partly because he's seen me and my ex fight, you know, and he wants to keep a peace. And that's another thing that I think he's an adult, so he's working on himself, which is awesome. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, Mickey, thank you so much for coming on with me today. And sorry about all the technical
Thank you.
difficulties, but we made it through. So, for those of you watching with me, I have two more fabulous women coming on this week. One of them on Thursday and one of them on Friday. And I will have to look at my calendar because my son took my phone and ran out. But I will look at my calendar and get those times posted. And I have two more women coming on to talk about this and to kind of share their stories and some different forms of abuse that we might not be thinking of that are, considered like a domestic violence, but maybe, it's coming from someone else that you're not living with. So we're going to break into this week. And there's my oldest son peeking in. And we are going to really look at this subject. So please know that these are what we're going to be talking about this week. I encourage you to invite people and bring them on and share these videos. I really, truly believe this is a topic that we all need to be talking about, and we need to get it out in the open instead of being shameful and hiding from it. That's the worst thing we can do.
Yes.
We need to bring it out into the open and discuss it. So, Mickey, I thank you so much for your time. It was so good to see your beautiful face again. And
Thank you
for your mission and your ministry there. And if anyone has any questions, Mickey has posted in the group. You can reach out to her via private message or go to her website. Okay. All right, guys. Well, you guys all have a blessed and wonderful day. And we'll talk soon. All right. As you can see, I got a waiver here.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.